Congress at the age of 29, went on to the Senate, and then George Bush tapped you for the vice presidency. Do you miss politics? Sort of.
Yes, I miss it. I'm enjoying my life back in Indianapolis with Marilyn and our children.
When you see crowds, do you sort of stop the car and still get out and say, shake hands and stuff like the old
No, but
days?
when I go into crowds, they say, who's this guy? He looks familiar.
You used to be Dan
Yeah,
Quayle.
that's right. I've recovered from that.
Have you?
No, it's all sorts of stories. I was in my hometown just a week ago, and I went into this place, and the person says, "You look like a politician." I said, "Oh my gosh." She says, "You look like a really famous politician. He lives in the neighborhood here." And she says, "But I forget his name."
That's great. Yeah, the illness, let's get over that first. How sick are you? You all right? I'm not going to catch anything here tonight. I mean, we're okay, right?
Just stay your distance, pal.
Everybody was saying you got out because you got some real problem. You look good.
No, I'm in good health. My doctors have said I could do anything I want, go wherever I want to. You know politics. Look, I added it up on one side, the campaign, what it was all about. And it wasn't just money. I'm convinced I could have raised the money. On the other side, you've got a family. I still have a teenage daughter that's home. I've got an 18-year-old son, a 20-year-old son. They go through it, and I chose the family.
How old is your daughter?
She's 16.
And she was really against it.
Well, let me just say, I don't want to bring her into it too much, that there was great relief in the Quayle family, especially with our children, when I decided not to run.
Will you reconsider someday or no?
I would imagine that I will run for president someday. But right now I am focused on making sure that we have a Republican presidential candidate that can beat Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton deserves to be a one-term president. I have not decided what my future political plans may be, except for this. I'm going to stay in the arena. I want to continue to debate the issues. I want my issues, like the culture issues, legal reform, a strong defense, cutting taxes, flat tax. I want those issues debated.
Well, they are being debated. You brought up family values, and there was a reference to Murphy Brown, and of course the press climbed all over you with both feet. And then all of a sudden the Clinton administration's talking about family values, and it seems like a good idea. What happened to you?
Vindication.
How did you screw that up?
I know it. Can you believe when I mentioned it in May of 1992, they were just absolutely, the media were in orbit. Total meltdown. And
why is that? Why did they?
I think there's
did they dislike you?
I think.
I mean, they got on your case good.
I think they feared, and still some do fear, that I'll be president of the United States because I have very strong ideas. I am ideologically driven, and
different from them.
Absolutely, it's a different agenda. I have an entirely different view of America, of what America should be doing, than they do. Also, I was the first boomer, if you will, on the national ticket. But as I wrote in the book here, I made some mistakes along the way. I contributed to allowing them to say some things that I wish they hadn't said, which was not only unfair, but in many cases just simply untrue. But that's water under the bridge. I
said he's an author. This is Standing Firm. You see it there on your screen. Pick it up at the bookstore. It's good reading, and there's been a lot of, there's some stories in there that I know that, because I know the background on a lot of this. I'm actually mentioned in the book.
Favorably, I might add.
Yes, favorably. Well, hey, you're here.
I'm lucky to be here. Thanks for the invitation. I've been waiting for months for this.
You know, you got beat up pretty good. You say you contributed to it. I heard people say the reporters were the same generation as you, and they didn't like the idea of having to follow you around when you were flying on big airplanes, and they're walking around in the rain scribbling notes. And they thought, you know, this guy goofed off in college, drank beer, fooled around. I got straight A's, and I'm walking around in the rain writing notes of what he's saying. The heck with them. I'm going to get that guy. You think there was any of that? Because you goofed off in college. You weren't a great student.
I was what do they call it? A late bloomer.
I was a lousy student. I mean,
I did not. It's one of the regrets that I have, and I've told my children this. I said, I wish I had taken college more seriously than I did. I did not study as much as I should have. I did not get good grades. I went to law school. I was a much more serious student in law school.
I heard you did okay on the bar exam and all that stuff.
Well, the bar exam, Marilyn and I took the bar exam together. We both passed. It was about 20% of the people that took it did not pass it. I passed it the first time. But I do just want to say for the record, I encourage not only my children, but all kids today really take their studies seriously, and it's one of the regrets that I have. But
I first became aware of you when PBS, the liberals won't like this, but prior to you being on the ticket as vice president, PBS used to call you all the time to debate weaponry and foreign policy, didn't they?
oh, absolutely. I was on Neil Lair quite a bit on the issue of foreign policy, and especially during the INF debate. I was the one that came up with the question on the futuristic weapons, which was not defined in the INF treaty. And when I brought it up and I pressured George Shultz, Colin Powell, who was the National Security Advisor at that time, to get a better definition, they had to go back, unprecedented, Roger, they had to go back and to have that renegotiated with the Soviet Union before the Senate would ratify it. Now, unfortunately, the way they renegotiated was in a direction that I didn't want. But I pointed out a flaw. It was a problem. I said, let's not go through this ABM interpretation issue 15 years down the road when the INF treaty might come up 15 years down the road. Let's get it solved now. And they went back, solved it. I thought not the way I would have solved it, but they did solve it, brought it up. If I hadn't brought it up, that ambiguity would still have been there.
Henry Kissinger was here the other night. He's a big fan of yours, by the way. He mentioned that he was.
He's a great American, a real intellectual who understands the balance of power. I just wish that his views were more represented in this administration. They could learn a lot by calling Henry Kissinger in periodically, listen to what he has to say. He's a very wise man.
He's a wise man. He also became a sex symbol, so I asked him what his best pickup line for girls was, and he almost died, but he did give me.
Well, let's skip that.
I won't ask you. No. Marilyn, we're not going to ask you on that line. It's all right. She said you'd rather play golf. I know that line.
I know it. You're going to get in trouble with
my
wife.
No, I know. I don't want to get in that. That's much more serious than getting in trouble with you.
That's right. That's serious business.
Are you playing basketball? Are you back to playing basketball? Or
I haven't played basketball, but I could. I'm back to running on the treadmill. I've run outside twice. I do not have the same capacity that I had before the illness, but I think that I will in a period of months. Okay. The doctor said, give it 6 months. After 6 months, you should have hopefully 100% of your lung capacity back. I'm running.
You never smoked, did you?
I did in college.
College, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't smoke.
But they didn't say that was a contributing factor, or no?
No, there's a lot of things. One is flying, and once I had this illness, I have had conversations with representatives from the airline industry, and they're very aware of this. It's called, in their vernacular, the coach class syndrome, because you sit back in very tight quarters for a period of hours, and you have a tendency to clot, so you really need to get up and walk around. They don't like to really advertise that much because they don't want everybody walking around in airlines. First of all, the aisles aren't that large. That was part of it. The book tour, where I was standing on my feet for 3 hours at a time, signing literally thousands of books. I also now have found out I have a little predisposition to clotting anyway in the blood. So you take a combination of all those things, and I had clots. Unfortunately, I did not have any real pain where it was clotting, so I didn't know what the problem was, nor did the physicians when we first looked at it. They did release, they got to my lung, and that's what sent me to the hospital.
It's dangerous, though, because one of those clots can break away and go to the brain or head for the
it's dangerous.
The heart or
it's
something.
Dangerous in the fact that if you don't get medical attention, eventually the blood flow to the lung will be shut off, and then you're a statistic.
Yeah, then breathing is...
it's impossible.
Yeah. What was the worst moment of your political career? What was the time, and I've known you a long time, so I know there were moments when the press really got on you. What was the one that really hurt personally? You got picked on about as much as Richard Nixon. You just did it in a more condensed period of time.
I don't know if there.
Did you ever feel like saying,
one.
You know,
it's very difficult to say, well, this one was the one, because I'll tell you what I did. From the very beginning, when all this nonsense started, I disciplined myself just to block it out and to ignore it. And I did that for a couple of reasons. One, I couldn't do the job and be prepared and be loyal to George Bush if I let it bother me. Two, I wouldn't let the media and others see that it bothered me. I was going to stand firm, but get my ideas across. I was vice president, they weren't. And third, I didn't want my children to see that this was
Getting
a
to
problem.
you.
Yeah, because they would, and they do, reflect how your parents respond. And if Marilyn and I had gotten down, they would
They'd have gotten down. I got to take a break. We'll be back.
A young man born in the middle of this century and from the middle of America.
Seems like a long time ago, doesn't it?
Boy, it sure does. I even looked young in that picture.
You didn't age so badly. I mean, the people in the makeup room said, you know what, he is cute.
Oh, did they say that?
Really
Thanks
did
a
say
lot,
that.
Roger. I really
I think they were
needed
talking
that.
about me.
Yeah, I'm sure
I
that
think they were talking about me.
It's your eyes.
It's my eyes. Which of the presidential candidates on the Republican side, likely presidential candidates, are you for or would you support? Have you declared?
Well, I haven't declared, and I don't know whether I will or not. I know George Bush is not going to endorse until after the primary. I was his vice president, and I may not endorse until after the primary, but I'm going to keep my options open. Clearly, right now, Bob Dole is the leader, and he is considerably ahead of Phil Gramm and Lamar Alexander. Those are the two that are pursuing him right now. Things can always change, but Bob Dole is a very tough, dedicated, intelligent leader, and he'd make a good president.
What did you learn about yourself through the last few years, Mr. Vice President? I mean, do you feel differently today than you did 5 years ago? Do you look at things differently?
Oh, absolutely. First of all, and I write a lot about this in the book, I made the mistake of not trusting myself and my instincts in those first few weeks of the 1988 presidential campaign. It was the first time in my life that I said, I'll just let others do it. Lesson number one in life, whether it's politics or not politics, trust yourself. You got to go with what's here. You've got to go with what you know is right. In politics, I have always been one, basically in life, to give people the benefit of the doubt. I still give people the benefit of the doubt. But I've learned the hard way that people will come into your office, people that you even know and have worked with, look you right in the eye and really not tell you the truth.
It's a tough lesson, isn't it?
Difficult to experience. It is something I do not appreciate. I perhaps was too forgiving and just didn't think people would do that, because I just don't operate that way. I learned that the hard way, and it's a valuable lesson. So today, I'm certainly more hardened. I hope I'm wiser. I know I'm older, and I've got a lot of experience.
Are you more cynical about people? Do you trust people less than you used
I
to?
wouldn't use the word cynical. I'm not a cynical person. I still give people the benefit of the doubt, but human nature, what it is, and in the political world, for what it is, people simply will not always level with you, and they tend to do too much what is in their own best interest, rather than what's in the best interest of the president, the vice president, or even the country.
We're going to take a phone call here. Albert from the great state of Missouri. You're on the phone?
Yes.
Say hello to Dan Quayle.
Hello, Dan Quayle.
Hello, Albert.
Sort of disappointed you're not running for president. I was looking forward to see what you could do out there.
Well, thank you very much. We just turned 48. 6 presidential elections from now, I'll be 69. That's young by some standards, so we have a little time ahead of us.
Albert? Oh, he's gone. If you want to join the conversation, I guess it's 1-800-988-TALK if you'd like to join the conversation with Dan Quayle tonight. You can call in, and we have some operators here taking your calls. So there it is on your screen. How would you be a different president now than you might have been had something happened to George Bush 6 months after he took office and you had to take over? You were pretty green. How would you be different today?
I would say maybe green as far as working in the Oval Office, because I hadn't worked in the Oval Office before. But I had been in the Senate for 8 years. I'd been in the House for 4 years. I knew the issues. I had a lot of congressional experience. I brought a lot of ideas, energy, and a way to formulate a vision for America to the White House. How would it be different today? Well, clearly, 4 years of experience versus your hypothetical of 6 months makes a difference.
I know George Bush kept you in the loop, but didn't he veto, what, 36 times use the veto or something like that, 34, 35, 36 times?
I don't know the exact number.
Several of those you worked pretty hard on the Hill for him, right?
Well, I was somewhat the liaison to Capitol Hill, especially to the Republicans. They were somewhat my responsibility.
Are the Republicans going to blow it down there right now, or are they going to be okay? This balanced budget amendment.
Well, I think we have to put it in perspective. First of all, the House, with the rules that they have, they can pass all this, at least get it up and vote on it. Some of it's not going to pass. They've already knocked out SDI, which I think is most unfortunate. I mean, here we are, vulnerable. You take one of these third world countries and pariah nations like Iran or Iraq or Libya, and they may have a tactical capability and ballistic missile. It doesn't take too much to get that to be intercontinental. And within a generation, they're going to have a capability hitting the United States, and we're defenseless. SDI is very important. The House, unfortunately, defeated that. Some things are going to get defeated in the House. A lot of it's going to go over to the Senate. Bob Dole, as we saw today, does not have a supermajority in the Senate. He's got 54 Republicans. He needed 67 for this balanced budget amendment. He got 66. To break a filibuster, he has to have 60. So I predict that there'll be a lot of things that will not get through the Senate. The Democrats don't want to give Bob Dole a victory. Bill Clinton doesn't want Bob Dole to have a victory. So you have the Democrats in the Senate, Bill Clinton in the White House, working against the Republican contract with America. If we don't get it this time, we'll make a contract in '96 and we'll get it then.
Okay, we'll be back with more from Vice President Dan Quayle right after these messages.
Cultural divide is not just a difference between being conservative and liberal. It is a difference between fighting for what's right and refusing to see what's wrong.
Well, what's wrong with politics? I mean, there's a lot of theater in it. We just saw that speech. You know, I quit politics 3 years ago because I don't know what's wrong with it even. I mean, I thought a step back and take a look at it.
Yeah, you need to get back into it.
You know,
you really do. We miss you.
I know, but the fact is that I'm making better money and I don't have to fly.
I don't care about making money. I'm talking about saving the country. Now, someday, Roger, you're going to have to get suited up again.
If the country needs me, I'll have to.
Yeah,
I might have to suit up.
Be like Ross Perot. If we ask you enough.
No, if the volunteers ask me.
If the volunteers ask
me,
you got it.
I need volunteers to ask me.
Well,
you talk about a guy who's cracked. That guy's a little crackers, to be honest with you, I think. Don't you? I mean, I'm just curious.
I think I'll just pass on that one.
We got a call from Florida, Tina. Tina?
Tina.
Hi, Mr. Quayle. It's a pleasure to talk with you.
Well, thank you very much. How are you?
Fine. My question is, what was the most fun thing about being vice president?
Oh, the most fun thing.
Working with George Bush every day. He's just such a decent, honest, hard-working individual. I had the pleasure of working with him for 4 years. He's a great man, loves his country, loves his family, and he made it fun.
Okay, Kevin from New Mexico. We'll go to New Mexico.
Oh,
Hello.
Well,
Kevin.
it's an honor to speak with you, sir.
Thank you.
My question is this. The media never, ever did give you a fair shake, in my opinion. And one of the things I admired about you the most is how you handled that. And I'd like to know what you think about the media in general today and why they seem to fear talk radio and shows like Rush Limbaugh and shows like that. And I'll hang up and listen on the air and stay in politics.
Well, thank you very much. Unfortunately, the national media today has an overwhelming liberal bias. And they won't argue with you on that, but they'll say that they're still objective and they can cover the story and ask the tough questions. They don't like Rush Limbaugh because, one, he's conservative, and two, he tells it like it is, and three, he's a factor. People tune in and the morning talk shows and read the morning newspapers, and then around noon they turn on Rush Limbaugh to get the other side. He's mixing it up. He's giving people a different perspective. He does have a lot of influence. And the media, even though we're a hugely diversified country, is a very homogeneous lot. They have similar backgrounds, they've gone to the same schools, they think alike. It does not represent America.
Am I wrong, or is there a growing group of African Americans who are conservative? I've seen, you know, we know of a few, Thomas Sowell and a few
Clarence Thomas
who have been conservative. But I see it even in applications for jobs and other things now. There are many African Americans who are not buying the old party line. Is that true?
I think it's true. The unfortunate thing is that the leadership, and especially the leadership in the civil rights groups, are just an extension of the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party take the African Americans for granted. They feel that they should vote for him 80% or vote for him and of 80% of that vote. And that's most unfortunate. We got a good two-party system. I'm finding more African Americans, especially the younger ones, are taking a look at the Republican Party. Family values is very important to them, entrepreneurship, tax cuts, schools. They are interested in moving this country forward, and they feel that the Democratic Party has, one, taken them for granted, and two, turned their back on them.
Got a call from California. John, say hello to Dan Quayle.
Mr. Quayle, I appreciate you taking the call.
Hi, John.
Why does it seem to us out here in the hinterlands that the majority of the Republican Party seems to be deferring to Bob Dole, even though in some people's minds he may not be the best candidate? We seem to be deferring to him as a senior member of our party.
Well, he is the senior member of the party. He's the majority leader. Newt Gingrich is the speaker. Newt Gingrich has got a lot of attention, gets a lot of coverage. Bob Dole, if he's the candidate, would be a great candidate. There's others. You've got Phil Gramm, Lamar Alexander. They would also be great candidates. You've got other ones that may or may not throw their hat in the ring. We're going to have a very good, qualified Republican presidential candidate, and I'm convinced that Bill Clinton's going to be a one-termer.
If you were Bill Clinton, what do you think Clinton's strategy will be to win re-election to the White House?
One, he's got to get his base excited. His base is turned off right now. They feel alienated. They don't trust Bill Clinton. He's got to go back to his base to some extent. And there's some risks with that because that means turning left. Two, he's got to focus on the Republican Congress, hope that they make some mistakes. He's going to play the old Social Security card. You can see them doing that on the balanced budget amendment. That won't wash. It won't go very far because Republicans have basically said that's off the table. And three, Bill Clinton will try to run on his record and experience. The fact of the matter is that Bill Clinton is in his third year right now. He still does not have the stature of a president of the United States. He does not have the moral authority to lead this country. There's too many people that question his integrity, his character, and because of that and a number of other things, I think that he will be a one-termer.
But we haven't had a major foreign policy disaster, and the economy's doing pretty well. So won't the American people go to the polls and vote self-interest, stability, status quo, rather, even if they're not crazy about him?
I gave the negative side. Now,
Okay.
the positive side is that we'll see where the economy is. As far as a foreign policy disaster, I hope we don't have one because this crowd can't handle it. If we have a crisis, God help us, because this group down there, they really are, I think, very incompetent, do not have a strategy. Bill Clinton doesn't understand foreign policy. 4 years ago, Roger, we sat around and said no Democrat, including Bill Clinton, could get elected president. Well, it's now President Bill Clinton. Today, Republicans are fat and happy and saying that Bob Dole or whoever else we put up can beat Bill Clinton in a heartbeat. I don't buy that because we may be saying that he couldn't get elected. We were wrong. We may be saying that he can't get reelected, and we may be wrong. This guy is a tough campaigner. The media will get back on his side. He will be out with the people. He and Hillary will, share their pain and frustration and how they've developed in the White House with the American people. It'll be sort of like, come and reason with me. I'm just like you. I want to help you. I've done a good job. And if it wasn't for those darn Republicans up there in the Congress, I could do a lot better. The Republican Congress has given Bill Clinton an issue, and he's going to run against the Republican Congress, and the Republicans just have to be wise enough and smart enough to put their program forward, do what they told the American people they're going to do, and we'll be all right.
Mr. Vice President, thank you for joining me tonight.
Thank
Good
you.
to see you again.
Good to see you.
All right, coming up next, former comedy star, Monty Python's Flying